Oh, yet we trust that somehow good will be the final goal of ill. To pangs of nature, sins of will, defects of doubt, and taints of blood. Behold, we know not anything. I can but trust that good shall fall, at last far off, at last to all, and every winter change to spring. I stretch lame hands of faith and grope, and gather dust and chaff and call to what I feel is Lord of all, and faintly trust the larger hope. In this excerpt from his tribute to a college friend who died too soon, Alfred Lord Tennyson expressed his faith over and against the face of adversity and overwhelming grief. His confidence that while he could not possibly know what even the present moment held, let alone the future, there was a hope worthy of his trust, and the future would somehow redeem the past. And because he was a poet, rather than a theologian or a political scientist, we needn't get bent all out of shape by what he meant by Lord of all, a metaphor that is open to wide interpretation. That's what poetic license means. However, since the most famous lines from this poem are, "'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all," I'm reasonably confident that Tennyson would have resonated with the old Irish folk song. And like a lovesick Lennon she has my heart in thrall. Nor life I owe, nor liberty, for love is Lord of all. But it's not quibbles about the ultimate source of our existence or the reality of love, let alone the words we use to name it, that I want to address this morning. No, it's the sense of trust that Tennyson expressed in his poem. Trust in a larger hope, and his quiet confidence that good will somehow prevail, that it prevails at the moment. I wish to explore how we can summon trust when we are most vulnerable, feel confidence amidst uncertainty, and cultivate the faith to move forward into the unknown, whatever fate befalls us. It is not easy to summon the trust we need to make life's journey navigable, let alone the faith to make it meaningful. We are all vulnerable, whether we recognize it or not, no matter how great our bravado may sometimes be. And most of us are more uncertain than we ever let on, more than we can safely let on. While people generally perceive me to be confident and decisive, something I could even put on my resume, sometimes even opinionated and overbearing if they don't much like me, no one should ever assume that I don't have my own share of doubts, that I don't second guess my beliefs and decisions, that I never feel vulnerable, or that I live without regrets. I'm a bundle of regrets, and I often second guess myself. I'm anxious and afraid more often than I care to admit, and my apparent confidence sometimes masks a measure of resignation, even fatalism. I reserve swimming upstream for only the things I care about most deeply, or those times when I'm simply too weary or too stubborn to try to avoid the risk of disappointment, which is actually my default position. Cherish your doubts, wrote Robert Terry Weston, and in that spirit we might add, savor your vulnerability. Our doubts cleanse us of errors, reveal new knowledge, and lead us to deeper understandings. If we remain open to our vulnerabilities, we may discover things about ourselves that we might never know otherwise. And we may let go of pretenses that prevent us from being our most authentic selves. Moments of vulnerability are learning opportunities, especially when they come in measured doses and not in overwhelming torrents that flow around us. But neither doubt nor an awareness of our vulnerability are helpful to us if we cannot find the trust, the faith, to face them and transcend them. Doubt can be debilitating and vulnerability oppressive. Doubt may help to keep us humble, while conscious vulnerability may remind us to be cautious and perhaps motivate us to be kind. But too much of either can render us incapable of enjoying life and meeting its challenges. We can be overwhelmed by them, and they can lead us to think that we have no control, none at all, over our destiny. At the same time, though, obliviousness to doubt and vulnerability may lead to recklessness and arrogance. While it is tempting to divide society into those who are somehow privileged and those who are not, and religious and political liberals are masterful at this, doing so tends to make us insensitive to the manifold ways in which those who appear privileged are in fact vulnerable in some way or another. How easily we dismiss the vulnerability of someone because we perceive them to come from a privileged class, without any real understanding of their personal circumstances. Yet we all have our own Achilles heel, each and every one of us. Our vulnerability may be material or psychological, existential or spiritual, external or internal. It is often invisible, especially to others. Each of us is accompanied by a shadow, whether or not others see it, whether or not we even realize it's there. Our shadows follow us wherever we go. And while there may be many ways to overcome our vulnerability, the two most common, it seems to me, are an inner sense of trust. Let's call it faith, and the companionship of others. And the two seem almost inevitably linked. As Marie Lu observes, trust is when we plummet into the depths of an abyss and reach out for each other's hands. On the vast sea of the unknown, trust and companionship are what sustain us when the going is perilous, and they truly go hand in hand. Just as surely as each of us individually walks hand in hand with others, no matter how self-differentiated we may fancy ourselves to be, no matter how much we imagine we know, no matter how confident we appear to be. The word faith makes a lot of us uncomfortable, mostly because we associate it with the bold but dubious doctrines of traditional religions, which most of us have happily abandoned. It's especially troubling when it's used to describe uncritical belief and the demand to follow it. The problem is that we've allowed it to become a synonym for doctrinal systems and the institutions organized to enforce them. Or as a euphemism for gullibility. And by invoking the word faith, many seek to avoid uncomfortable questions or criticisms. But faith isn't something that's external to us. And it certainly isn't some institution or system of belief. If our faith rests in institutions and systems only, we will inevitably be disappointed, for they are almost always without merit in terms of the demands they make upon our trust. Faith, trust, is a feeling, an attitude, the sense of confidence, perhaps even certainty, that gives us strength to roll out of bed in the morning, get dressed, and take on the day. Sometimes that's as much trust as I can muster in the early hours of the morning. Other days I'm much more confident, right through to noon and on into the evening. It's what comforts us when we're down, what guides us when we're uncertain, what reassures us when we are anxious and afraid. I have faith in my wife, Cindy, because I trust her as I have trusted nobody else in the world, save perhaps for my own parents. And I have faith in several relatives and a few close friends, most of whom, it turns out, are Unitarian Universalists. But that's mostly because that's who I associate with, not any special virtue to be found among members of our religious tradition when compared with others. Moreover, I trust many people, countless people, untold numbers of people, to be who they are, to behave in particular ways, even though it's not always what I might like. I have faith in the democratic organization of society, even though the results of that faith have been proven to be far more disappointing than my lofty expectations. I've taken it on the chin for democracy, and I'd do it again. Yet in the absence of a ready supply of philosopher kings and benevolent queens, I have seen no other means of social organization that surpasses it. In this regard, I have less confidence in people than I do in process, and I have little faith at all in rigid partisanship. I even have faith that time and evolution will correct the harm that human beings have inflicted upon the earth, even though neither time nor evolution can return the world to its pristine state. I could go on, but these illustrations should suffice for now. And even if they don't, it's all you're getting this morning. They are no less examples of faith than the faith that people express in creeds, books, amulets, or prophets, be they dead or leading the latest political, economic, or religious cult. Indeed, I'm persuaded these illustrations reveal a more profound faith precisely because they involve a sense of confidence or trust that grows out of my own experience of life, not demanding my consent, but arising naturally from my own hard-won experience. The fundamental assumptions with which I engage the world around me. You all have faith in something, in someone, in some just and noble cause that commands your devotion. This doesn't mean that our faith in life is never shaken, that our trust has never been betrayed. But so far, at least in my case, it has always recovered. I would even go so far as to say that the principles we enshrine as definitive of our tradition are themselves statements of faith, not simple abstractions, not quaint ideas to entertain, but elements of our faith about the kind of world we live in and our trust in one another. They certainly don't describe the world as it is, and a considerable amount of evidence could be marshaled to refute them, but they inspire confidence in us. And trusting in them, they inform our understanding and our choices when we seek to navigate the unknown. They're bedrock. So we affirm the worth and dignity of persons even when we find ourselves in heavy traffic and some impatient or careless driver cuts us off, although we usually have more colorful language to name them. Even when a friend says something colossally stupid or callously mean, because we have also seen them in their better moments. Even when we have doubts about our own worth, because we realize that almost everyone struggles with similar doubts, save for those who are drowning in narcissism and grandiosity. And we strive to search for truth and meaning, even though we are as confused by the complexity of the universe as we are awed by it. Even when we vacillate about whether to do this instead of that. Even when we realize that we can not always know what is true, let alone discern what something means for certain. It's often said that trust must be earned. So often, in fact, that it's become a cliche. But I'm not convinced this is necessarily true, or even generally true. It seems to me that this is especially the case when we are talking about the innate trust with which we face life, the trust that life is good overall, and that things will work out in the end, even if we ourselves are disappointed with the outcomes, as we will inevitably be if we live long enough. Such trust may be lost, betrayed, or even squandered, but I have encountered people who are nevertheless trusting in life despite their experiences of disappointment, loss, and even tragedy. And I have also encountered people who seem incapable of trusting others, let alone trusting life itself. Such trust, such faith, such confidence is a predisposition, not something that we insist the universe teach us and earn. The capacity for trust seems almost instinctive, and Ralph Waldo Emerson described it precisely that way. In his essay, Intellect, Emerson wrote, "All our progress is an unfolding, like the vegetable bud. You first have an instinct, then an opinion, then a knowledge, as the plant has a root, bud, and fruit. Trust the instinct to the end," he said, "though you can render no reason. It is vain to hurry it. By trusting it to the end, it shall ripen into truth, and you shall know why you believe." Trust the instinct to the end, even though you can render no reason. In navigating the unknown, we must accept that we will never know everything we may wish to know, and even a fraction of what would be useful. We will never be immune to risk and vulnerability. And the one thing that will be denied all of us is an awareness of how things turn out in the end. Our part in the script of life stops. It doesn't resolve itself on screen for our benefit. Despite these limitations, the very conditions of mortality, by the way, we must summon the trust, the faith, to live our lives with courage and integrity, to accept life's uncertainties with grace, and to sail ahead with confidence, even though we find ourselves navigating uncharted seas on our voyage into the unknown. This is the fate of all humans dwelling in this vast, unimaginable cosmos. As Charles G. Ames assured us, there is no comfort or sanity except in trusting. No peace, but in believing. We must walk by faith and not by sight, for always the unknown must be more than the known. Our closing hymn is number 1021, Lean on Me. Feel free to do so. Please join in singing in your own space, wherever you are.